Well, that partnership is a long time coming. You remember 2 years ago, the president said that the federal government will, in partnership with the states, do everything possible to pull out 100 million Nigerians out of poverty over 10 years. At that time, we didn't have up to 95 million, about 95, 98 million people in extreme poverty, according to the World Poverty Clock. But this time, there is a partnership that you have seen in the opening slide, and let's have a conversation about that. What is it about? It's some partnership between the federal government and Microsoft Corporation. We have Ife Adebayo with us this morning. He is a special assistant to the president on technology and innovation. He joins us from our studio in Abuja. Thank you so much for your time this morning, Mr. Adebayo. Could you give us a background into this and where we are and how confident should people be?
Thank you for having me. So the background, I think, dates back to about 4 years ago when the vice president first had the first initial meeting with Microsoft. And this was followed by a visit to Silicon Valley and a couple of other engagements with technology ecosystem across the country. And then the culmination of it was the meeting of the vice president with the Microsoft president in January of this year, where they had a conversation on the role that Microsoft can play in supporting the technology ecosystem in Nigeria and in, of course, providing job opportunities for Nigerians. From that meeting, from the conversations, the engagement of various government agencies and engagement with the Microsoft team, the announcement that you're speaking about happened about a partnership across three core pillars: connectivity, skills development, and digital transformation.
Sounds like a good idea. Perhaps a question to come next would be, do we even have an idea as a country how many people are in the core sector? How many people are active? You are not unaware of the efforts by a good number of youths in Nigeria upskilling themselves and producing products, digital products that are now worth hundreds of millions, if not hundreds of billions of naira already. And I'm pretty sure there are so many people like that spread all over the 6 geopolitical regions of the country. So have we been able in any way to identify these categories of people and consequently be able to say, okay, these are the direct beneficiaries, without prejudice to the number of jobs that this project is targeting?
So that's a very good question, because one of the first things that the government of President Buhari did when we came in 2015, led, of course, by the vice president, who is the chairman of the Economic Forum, of the Economic Council, was to do a sort of an innovation mapping, and we looked at the whole country, the 6 geopolitical zones. We engaged with the various states, and we were able to group the states into various stages of innovation and technology engagement readiness. So there were the states that were in the nascent stage. These are the states that have not really embraced innovation, that have not really embraced the use of technology, and there was not a lot of activity happening. While there were the states that were in the semi-active stage, which you could see a bit of action going on, you could see a bit of interest. Then we have the states that were innovation-ready states, like Lagos, for example, like Abuja, for example, innovation-ready. So we're able to categorize and group these states, and this helped us to be able to define the sort of intervention that each region and each state was going to require. So over the last few years, we've been able to engage directly with all these states. What you will find is that Nigeria's internet penetration is actually quite high. We have over 80 million Nigerians that actively use digital devices, right, already. So the question is, how do you move from just the use of digital devices to the actual use of these digital devices for productivity, to be able to use it positively? And so we've engaged with a lot of people. We've engaged with local technology companies, international technology companies, people within the big tech companies. In the last 4 or 5 years, you'll find that the interest by big tech has even been has continued to increase with the visit to Nigeria of the Google CEO Sundar Pichai, the visit of the Facebook founder, Mark Zuckerberg, the meeting of the vice president of Microsoft president in January, the visit of IBM, and a couple of all these other guys. All these are pointers to the fact that these guys now see that there is a direct interest of government in this sector. We are stratifying and analyzing what the various interventions and the various projects that will need to be done within each space is, and we're able to then engage directly based on the specific needs of each state.
Well, still talking about that, we have had a lot of talk about the right of way and all of that, between states, and that conversation seems unending. But then, just as you talked about the tech readiness of one state as opposed to that of others, it would seem like we're a long way away from equitable distribution of wealth, so to speak, in the infrastructure that we have. Now, in terms of the readiness or inadequate readiness of the states, what needs to be done across all of these regions? Because from this project, I'll come to the question of how this partnership is going to be executed. But what is the level of readiness of all the 6 geopolitical zones, and what kind of networking arrangement are we looking at, or cooperative arrangement are we looking at, that would give us a long-term benefit as opposed to a short-term, it's here now, let's take advantage?
So I think the first thing we need to understand, and this I can tell you from experience, from engaging across the various regions, is that one of the foundations that is required is engagement with institutions of higher learning. And you will find that in almost every state you go to in Nigeria, you are going to be surprised at what people are doing in technology within institutions of higher learning. For example, when you speak of a state like Borno, you wonder, what is going to be happening here. But I visited Borno and I saw young boys building drones. I saw young boys building IoT devices that could be used as walking sticks and all of that. So that conversation, I had that conversation with the vice president, and he said something that struck me. And he said, Ife, there is no shortage of skills. There's only a shortage of opportunities. So we have to give more opportunities to all these guys within all these spaces. And that's what we've done so far. On the issue of broadband connectivity across the states and the readiness across the states tied to right of way, the Minister of Communications and Digital Economy, Dr. Isa Ali Pantami, has actually been driving this in partnership with the Vice President, and we recently came up with a national broadband policy, which gives the right to build relevant infrastructure, digital infrastructure, broadband infrastructure across every state, which now takes us to the issue of the right of way. The Vice President, as the chairman of the National Economic Council, that has all the governors, of course, has been driving engagement with the state governments to let them understand that charging huge costs up front for broadband infrastructure, for right-of-way for broadband infrastructure, may give you some money in the interim, but then it doesn't help the overall economy in the long term, because then there's discouragement. The infrastructure companies have heavy initial costs and then pass that on to the end user, and then it also reduces the speed at which they can operate. But if you bring down your right-of-way charges, which a lot of the states have done, and some have even totally removed it, removed the cost of right-of-way, like Ekiti and Ekiti State and Edo State, for example. A state like Lagos has been very supportive, has partnered with a lot of the infrastructure companies to give them free use of their right-of-way. And that's why you see a space like Yaba in Lagos was able to boom with digital technology, because the state government partnered with infrastructure companies and gave them all the support they needed. So are we where we need to be yet? No, because not every state is on board yet, but so many of the states are already bringing down these costs and are engaging to ensure that this becomes a national achievement.
Well, I have 1 minute to break, Mr. Ifedayo, but Mr. Adedayo. But before can you at least begin to tell us the plan for taking people engaged? What's the plan? What's the mode of operation for this partnership between the federal government and Microsoft Corporation?
So what the government has always said, and what we've driven most of our activities on, is private sector engagement. So if there's anything I can tell you about the partnership, is that across each of the pillars, they'll be driven by the private sector. But I can tell you more about it as we go deeper.
Okay, well, I would like to know exactly what the precise opportunities are, because just as you said, quoting the Vice President, we don't have a dearth of skills, we only have a dearth of opportunities. In which areas do we have these opportunities, and sectors, perhaps to be more specific? You tell us a little more on that when we return from this break. Just stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. Mr. Ife Adebayo, Special Assistant to the President on Technology and Innovation, is still with us in our Abuja studio. So talk to us about what the plan is to operationalize this partnership. You said it's going to be private sector driven. We are looking at diversifying the Nigerian economy, and a lot is being done by the Office of the Vice President on agriculture and so many other things like that. How do all these tie into which specific sectors of the Nigerian economy?
Thank you. The beauty of technology is that it is an enabler across all sectors, right? So if you're able to build your technology infrastructure, which is one of the pillars that this partnership is about, which is connectivity, if you're able to provide the relevant skills, which is the second pillar of the partnership, and then if you're able to, with these two, you're now able to drive digital transformation, which is the third pillar. So on the first pillar, which is connectivity, Microsoft has a new technology, which is the airband technology, which uses TV white spaces to provide connectivity in underserved and difficult to reach areas. This will be driven by Microsoft in partnership with the Ministry of Communications and Digital Economy. And over the next few months, what they'll be doing is identifying communities across the 6 geopolitical zones to deploy these to deploy this technology. And not just deploying the technology, but then layering required social services on the technology. So what you will find is that over the next few months, when these communities are identified and this technology is deployed, we'll be deploying services around e-health. We'll be deploying services around other community services, such as digitization of records, such as building local databases, such as what the roles that technology can play in education and advancement of education, and even the role that technology can play in disseminating information to the local populace. So all these will be layered on the connectivity that will be provided within these communities. The second part, which is the skills training, the target is to train about 5 million Nigerians with the support of Microsoft. And it's not just training 5 million Nigerians empty. It's going to be training 5 million Nigerians on various levels. So there will be those who need just the basic digital skills training, those who just need to know how to engage, those who just need to know how to use, the basic office tools and things that just make you more employable and more useful in today's time and age. There are those who will require these digital skills just to be able to take their businesses to the next level. Just the guy who runs a barbing shop and just needs to understand that, I can build a website that just allows more people to see me. I can set time slots and have people book their schedules for them to have their haircut. Just people who have a small supermarket and want to be able to reach other people who sell things and want to be able to reach other people, want to be able to reach other markets. That's the second level. While the third level is engaging with those who require top digital skills and then are able to learn how to build websites, to learn how to build software, how to build apps, and even, do things around data science, machine learning, artificial intelligence. All these are going to be driven with the support of Microsoft, and everybody will have an opportunity to depend on where you fit within the plan. While the third is digital transformation. And when you have the initial two that I've spoken about, the next is how can you maximize its usage? And we'll be starting with government. Microsoft is engaging with the EFCC on how to on supporting the good work that the EFCC is already doing on anti-corruption, but giving them additional technology tools that they can use to block loopholes and to also drive the anti-corruption drive of Mr. President and Mr. Vice President. And the final one is engagement with the Institute for Cultural orientation on how we can digitize and preserve Nigeria's languages, starting up with the three main languages of Yoruba, Igbo, and Hausa.
Well, three things very, very quickly, if you can take them in one breath. I don't know how. One, you say it's going to be private sector driven. How will this selection of the private sector engagement, how is it going to go? Secondly, the 5 million people that are going to be trained and given capacity to do better with their lives, how are they going to be selected? And what's the timeline? What's the duration of this project?
So the private sector engagement is strictly driven by the Microsoft team. So what the federal government is doing is providing support to Microsoft as a player within the space, right? So the Microsoft team determines who their partners are. They determine who the implementation partners are who are going to drive these projects as we go along. On the selection of the 5 million people that will be engaged, that will be participating in these trainings, it's going to be democratized. It's going to be free. It's going to be open to everyone to apply. The Microsoft team is engaging with the National Information Technology Development Agency. They're also having conversations with the Federal Ministry of Communications and Digital Economy and the Federal Ministry of Youth and Sports Development on the various options that will be available to people. So what I would just say is people should look out. The same way this partnership was announced and everybody got to know about it, these opportunities will also be announced as we go along. And on timelines, a lot of these projects will be concluded within a 12-month frame, but the training of 5 million Nigerians, that will run over a 5-year period.
Well, Mr. Ife Adebayo, Special Assistant to the President on Technology and Innovation, we want to thank you very much for all that you have, all that you do, and we wish you the best.
Thank you for having me.
Sunrise Daily is back for one more issue. We'll be back.